She escaped her parents at 17 with nothing. Years later, they showed up at her mansion. Like this video and subscribe before we begin. Stories like this one deserve to be seen by more people. Lily grew up in a small town in southern Alabama, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business, but somehow nobody ever seemed to notice what was happening inside her house. Her family didn't have much. Money was always tight, and her parents made sure she knew exactly who to blame for that. To them, she wasn't a daughter. She was the reason their lives hadn't turned out the way they wanted. They said it often, and they said it plainly, the way people talk about the weather. By the time Lily was 6 years old, she was already cooking dinner and cleaning the house from top to bottom. Not helping, doing it. If a dish wasn't put away right, if the floor wasn't spotless, if dinner wasn't on the table exactly when they wanted it, there were consequences. Harsh ones, the kind that came without warning and without mercy, day after day, until she learned to move through her own home the way a soldier moves through a minefield. Quiet, careful, always bracing for the next mistake she didn't know she'd made. There was no version of her childhood that looked like other kids' childhoods. No sleepovers, no after-school clubs, just chores and fear and the quiet, constant math of trying to stay small enough not to be noticed. Most kids in that situation break. Some shut down, some act out. Lily did neither. Somewhere in the middle of all that fear, something else took root in her, a kind of stubborn, quiet resolve. She didn't have the words for it back then, but even as a young girl, she understood one thing clearly: nobody was coming to save her. If she wanted a different life, she was going to have to build it herself, brick by brick, without anyone's permission. So she turned to the one thing her parents couldn't take away from her or ruin with a bad mood: her education. While other kids complained about homework, Lily treated it like a lifeline. She stayed after school when she could. She read everything she could get her hands on. She turned every test into a small act of rebellion, proof to herself that she was more than what her parents told her she was. It paid off. By the time she graduated high school, she'd earned something her parents never saw coming, a full scholarship to a university several states away. When she told them, there was no celebration. Her parents didn't see a scholarship. They saw a leash slipping out of their hands. They told her flatly that she wasn't going anywhere, that she had responsibilities at home, that she owed them for raising her, and now it was time to help pay the bills, not run off chasing some fantasy about college. For the first time in her life, Lily didn't argue. She didn't beg them to understand, and she didn't wait for permission she knew would never come. She left in the middle of the night while they were asleep, with a bag she'd packed in secret and hidden under her bed for weeks. She had no car, barely any money, and no plan beyond getting as far from that house as she possibly could. So she did the only thing she could do. She stuck out her thumb on the side of a dark Alabama highway and hitched her way to school, one ride at a time, trusting strangers more than she'd ever been able to trust her own parents. It was terrifying. It was also the first truly free moment of her entire life. College was a different world, and Lily threw herself into it completely. For the first time, hard work actually led somewhere instead of just avoiding punishment. She studied harder than almost anyone around her, not because she had something to prove to her professors, but because she had something to prove to herself. When she walked across the stage at graduation with honors, there was no family in the crowd cheering her name, but she didn't need them there. She had done this on her own, and that mattered more to her than any applause ever could. Not long after graduating, Lily landed a position at a large textile company. She was sharp, focused, and willing to outwork anyone in the building. Managers noticed. Promotions came quickly, one after another, each one confirming what she'd always quietly suspected about herself, that she wasn't the burden her parents had made her feel like. She was capable. She was valuable. She was good at this. The money got better. The title got bigger. And yet, something in Lily still felt unfinished, like she hadn't reached the version of herself she'd been chasing since she was 6 years old, with a dish towel in her hands. So she kept going. By the time she turned 30, Lily had done something almost nobody could have predicted for the girl who once hitchhiked out of Alabama with everything she owned in one bag. She became CEO of the company. She bought a beautiful home, the kind with a driveway that curved and windows that caught the morning light just right. She filled it with furniture she picked because she liked it, not because it was cheap or convenient. For the first time in her life, Lily wasn't just surviving, she was living. Really living, on her own terms, in a home that was entirely hers. And then, after all those years, all that distance, all that silence, her parents found her. They didn't reach out with an apology. There was no acknowledgement of the years of harsh treatment, no mention of the little girl who used to flinch at footsteps in the hallway. Instead, they showed up with a story about how her father was ill now, and how they needed her to step in and take care of them. They reminded her, almost casually, that she could clearly afford it now. As if her success was simply a resource they were entitled to tap into whenever it suited them. Lily stood in the doorway of the home she had built entirely on her own, and looked at the two people who had spent her childhood telling her she was a burden, a mistake, the reason their lives never got better. She didn't yell, she didn't cry. She simply told them no. She told them she would not let them hold her back again, not after everything it had taken to get here. And then she said the thing that had been sitting in her chest for over 20 years, waiting for the moment she was finally strong enough, safe enough, and far enough away to say it out loud. She told them they weren't her parents. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. They were simply the worst part of a life she had left behind a long time ago, back on that dark highway, in the middle of the night, with nothing but a bag over her shoulder and a decision she never once regretted. Then she closed the door. Lily's story isn't really about a company or a house or a title. It's about a little girl who was told every single day that she wasn't worth much, and who quietly decided not to believe it. It's proof that where you start doesn't have to be where you end up, and that the people who are supposed to protect you don't always get the final word on who you become. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Real stories about strength, survival, and starting over. It helps this channel keep telling them.